Hello, hi, it's me. Hoping that today goes better than the other live I tried last week. So I'm in my kitchen. I'm wearing a sequined jumpsuit for you today. It's not even a jumpsuit, it is a full sweatsuit or tracksuit. I don't know if you can see that, don't know if you like it, but it just felt a bit extra. That is the sound of rubber and plastic that I'm sitting on, not farts. Really? Oh yeah, it sounds like a fart. Anyway, I am chatting to you today with Priv to Prog, standing for Privilege to Progress. They are supposed to be joining me today for an IG chat. Really hope that it's turned me up. And so I will be looking out for them. Hello, Yoga Girl. Hello to lots of you who are here. Still waiting. Here they are. Today by Melissa, who I'm so excited to meet and excited for all of you to meet because of her amazing work.
Hey.
Oh no, hi, how are you?
I almost wore a sequin jumpsuit. I swear. It's a long story, but I'm staying in a friend of a friend's house out in LA. I've been here for months. And I opened the closet and there was a sequin jumpsuit in there. And I was like, should I wear it?
Well, I wish you had. I've been doing press all day, and I was like, you know what? I have to feel like I'm showing up to work. And then I wondered if this would be inappropriate for our chat, but then I thought, no, I'm going to show up for you today.
Exactly. I saw somebody on Twitter recently was like, I'm going to get dressed, full makeup, everything, and go walk my dog and just feel like a person.
Yeah, why not? How are you doing with all the quarantine?
I thought I was doing totally fine. And then last night I decided I was going to make this banana bread. I have these like 4 like really ripe bananas. And I like got this recipe, Bon Appetit, the best banana bread ever. I put all the ingredients together. I put it in the oven and then I like look on the counter and there's the bananas. So we have bread.
Just bread.
Just bread. So I don't think I'm totally together, but
that's fine. That's all right. I know that you guys have been working your asses off lately. I've really been paying attention to the work that you've been doing, and that's why I was so thrilled to be able to have this conversation with you and introduce my iWay audience to you. We are full of, it's 1.1 almost million. We're about to go over that mark. Full of young people and people of all ages really who want to be allies, who want to make a difference, and often don't know where to start. And I think that nowadays there's all this information of how you are supposed to be an ally, but people don't know where they can be helpful, and there aren't always instructions. And so what I love about your organization, Privilege to Progress, which is at Priv to Prog, I will put all of the details up later for everyone who wants to see, is that you are creating an easy dialogue for people to have these, and you're giving them the vocabulary, the words and the actions in order to actually make a difference rather than just be helpless bystanders.
Absolutely. And that is like, you have it exactly right. Thank you so much. We are so appreciative of you because, you know, we did our first coffee live. I did bring my coffee. I know you can't read this, it's backwards, but it says slap your local racist. Not that I promote violence, you know, I think it's just make you angry enough to speak up and learn. But the thing about what we do is that we are that opening, just like you do at iWay, and I want to hear all about it, is that we're that opening for people to get on the path to anti-racism. And what you're doing by amplifying what we're doing is getting to all those people who follow you who haven't seen a lot of this information. We're like the gateway to this information. And then when you join us, you get to learn along with us. So
yeah, we're like Russian dolls of activism almost, aren't we? Where we're just kind of because I've noticed that I found a lot of great voices just by following your account and all the great scholars and all the great work that you highlight. And so I feel like we're all just picking nits out of each other's hair. We're all just looking after each other and highlighting each other.
Exactly.
And I also love the fact that you are a team of women particular, or predominantly, I believe, who pull no punches, and you are unapologetic in your approach to justice. And really, that's, you know, from everything that we're seeing in the news cycle right now, that's the only way that things are going to change, is if we are not polite about this any longer. Because being polite isn't working. It hasn't worked. Nothing has moved fast enough. And so that is another thing that I think really speaks to iWave, because we are an aggressive movement. We move with love and radical acceptance. But we don't fuck around. You know, we sign petitions, we harass whichever great powers we have to harass en masse. Anything that I have personally managed to get changed, if that is a global policy or if that is working on a bill to change a law, I'm not doing this by myself. I'm doing this with an army of furious people behind me and with me and beside me. And so I think that the unity of pissed off people who are willing to organize and actually make change is something that is so needed right now. And right now, if ever the pandemic has taught us anything, it is how unbalanced the infrastructure of our society is. And so we love radicals, and we love people who are willing to actually make change. Will you tell me about your company, Privilege to Progress, how it started, and what your actual mission is?
Yes. So I don't know. You probably remember, I think most people remember, the two gentlemen that got arrested in Starbucks for doing nothing but just not ordering a coffee. So I live in that neighborhood in Philadelphia, and I never sat in that store. I just rarely did. I would go in, maybe sometimes pick up a coffee and then leave. And this one day, I decided I had an hour to kill. It was on my way home. I went in, I sat down, and within a few minutes, I see these police officers start coming in, and these two young black guys in front of me, just sitting there. And I hear this young woman's voice. This is Michelle, my partner, and for Privilege to Progress. And she's saying, "What did they do? What did they do?" And she saw the entire thing happen. So this, you know, most people have seen the video. They see that these two guys, they came in, they asked for the key to the bathroom. The woman said it's only for paying, the barista said it's only for paying customers. They sat down waiting for the friend, who's a middle-aged white guy, basically. And they were there to talk about this real estate deal. And she called the cops. You can hear the 911 call on YouTube or whatever. And she was like, "There's two gentlemen in my cafe refusing to leave." Well, first of all, that was not true at all. And so Michelle, she was like, "Did you feel like your life was in danger? Why did you call the police?" She was like confronting the woman. The woman turned bright red, and like she had nothing to say, of course. I mean, all the time in my neighborhood, people go in that Starbucks and they, you know, go ask for the bathroom, white people, and like nobody says anything. People sit in there and do nothing. So anyway,
I used to sit and do my homework in there for hours as a kid. I couldn't afford to buy anything. No one bothered me. No one harassed me.
Yeah. Oh, and no one bothered. Of course, no one would bother me. A middle-aged white woman sitting there. I hadn't ordered anything. Like the week before, I walked in, I waited for my son. I didn't order anything, and I left. So anyway, so we get the video. We get outside. I was like, someone has to share this. Someone has to share this. I had like 300 followers on Twitter. I wasn't big on social media at the time. So I wrote this caption, like basically calling out the racism. I tweeted it. And then later on, I was like, really, I got to try to tweet this at some people who might share it. So I tweeted it at Sean King, DeRay McKesson. And within 24 hours, it was insane. I think, I don't know, by the end of that weekend, it might have had 13 million views just of that tweet. And the world, like Australia and, you know, Ireland, it was everywhere. I had every single media outlet, you know, in my DMs, on my email, texting me. I don't even know how they got to me, but they wanted to talk about this video. And I was like, wait a minute. All I did was see something and call it out. Like I wasn't the one that first stood up to it. It was this young black woman, Michelle. So I figured out through a bunch of people how to find her. And then we got together and we started From Privilege to Progress. And basically what happened was, if you think of it in its sort of like simplest terms, She spoke up, I amplified her voice, and it crossed our sort of segregated networks. It made it to mainstream media, and people started paying attention. And people paid attention, honestly, we believe, because like a white person said it. How often do white people say this stuff out loud? So that's our story. We didn't know each other that day. We came together, we started this organization, and what we do is we continue that conversation we started that day, that public conversation about race, because our networks are extremely segregated. We think, you know, you and I are in the work, so we think like, oh yeah, people must be seeing these things, people must know all these things. They don't.
No.
It's crazy what people don't know. I posted that video the other day. You probably saw it about the N-word. It was Mark Lamont Hill talking about it. I can't tell you, like Michelle and I go around the country, we do speeches on our social media. People don't know not only not to use that word, but why you shouldn't use that word. Why?
They think it's a word that they learned from music. They have no idea about the history behind that word.
Exactly.
Or who can and what use it. And I think that we both come at this from a place of we are completely right to be angry, but also we need a plan. Because I think so much of what happens on social media is that it turns into angry chaos.
Yes.
Understandably and rightfully, but then the chaos becomes so widespread and so loud that then we lose the sense of order. And so I think that's why organizations like yours are so perfect for existing, to take that chaos that needs to make the noise and then putting it somewhere helpful. So how does Privilege to Progress work?
Okay, so what we do, we make it very simple for people.
Yeah.
So basically we're trying to desegregate the conversation, because there was a study pretty recently that said if you're white, for example, your network is 91 or 92% white, and you're rarely posting about race. So what happened that day in the Starbucks was that it sort of broke through those networks and then made it to mainstream media. So we're trying to continue to desegregate that conversation and model what conversations look like. Open conversations about race. Like, we can talk about it right now, feel totally fine about it. We know if we screw up, if we say something uninformed, that we can then say, you know, with some humility, yeah, you know, I didn't know, I'm learning now, and then you could take the action to do better. So we ask people 3 things: to learn with us on our social media accounts. Like you said, we're posting resources all the time. And so, like, I am constantly reading and watching and listening to things, as is Michelle, and then we take that information and we put it on our social media so that other people can do that with us. And then we ask you to speak up in your everyday life. So when you are in a space where something happens or someone says something that you know is wrong, speak up. And you don't have to know everything. You don't have to be an activist to do that. At the bare minimum, you can say, that's not okay with me. To just interrupt it right there. We also have resources to tell you what to say in certain instances.
So,
and then,
perfect. No, go on. No, carry on what you were saying.
And then the 3rd thing is amplify, and that's what iWay does. Amplifies. I mean, that's exactly what we're doing. Is we're amplifying the voices of people of color, again, to desegregate that conversation and show that when you learn, when you speak up, when you amplify, then we can have people be part of the solution. And instead of like feeling guilty or ashamed or defensive about privilege, they can use it as an opportunity for progress, right? Turn it around to the positive. So
I agree. And that's something that we're seeing a lot of. Like, we're seeing a lot of misguided defensiveness around being told that you have privilege. You know, people see that as, there's a part of me that wonders if when people deny their own privilege or they take it as an offense, it's because their ego has been hurt, because then they think that what they have achieved has lost value because they had a leg up. And I think that that's such a shame, because privilege is something that you should feel. I mean, there's no time for you to bother feeling guilty about it. You need to act on it. You need to destabilize it in the name of equality. No one wants white people or privileged people or able-bodied people or straight people to walk around
Exactly.
just smashing themselves over the head all the time. We just want them to work towards equality. And sometimes that means that those of us with privilege are going to have to give some things up in order to make space for a better and more and more loving and more communal world. It's lonely being sectioned off like this.
Exactly. And you know what the thing is that yes, you may be giving something up, but what you have to remember is at the same time you're gaining something. Yes. Because when you're using the privilege you have in a way that that makes the world better for everyone, you feel not only freer in yourself and more like yourself and more true to yourself, but you also feel part of the collective. And the thing is, you know, like the United States, like, is so much about the individual, but really we need to be about the collective, right? We need to take care of one another. I mean, if COVID-19 doesn't teach us that, what the heck does it teach us?
It's funny, like the biggest pandemic that's happening alongside COVID right now is loneliness. And we're lonely because we're divided, not just because of tech, not just because of our social media, but the powers that be, the structures that hurt most of us the most, are able to be effective in harming us because we are divided. And when we are divided, we are easier to conquer. And there's all this sort of like oppression Olympics going on, and there's a lot of infighting going on and self-cannibalizing. And really what we need to do is just work together to build a bigger, stronger army with one another. Can I ask you a personal question?
Yeah, anything.
Okay. Yeah. Pre that moment in Starbucks, before you participated in building this sort of grassroots movement for change, would you have considered yourself someone who was doing the most with your own privilege to help those who don't?
100% no. 100% no. And that's like the basis for our organization, because what Michelle and I say when we speak is that we are two regular people who just used the privilege. And she'll say she's a young Black woman and she's African. Her parents are from Ghana. And she'll talk about colorism, and she'll talk about how Africans have some privilege in the United States that African Americans don't. But it's the privilege that you have, and like neither of us were really using it. And the thing about it is that before that, look, I was like kind of educated. I wasn't completely uninformed. But I wasn't a person I definitely wasn't an activist, and I wasn't a person who would speak up really in my everyday life. I wasn't a person who really understood. I got to tell you, that day in that Starbucks, and I'm working on a book about this, that is the first moment where I actually like felt my whiteness. And I know that sounds like kind of strange, but normally, you know, when you're in a place, when a white person is in a place and you see someone Black, you notice a Black person's race, right? Because we notice that because we've been conditioned that way to see them as the other, right? But we don't look at our own race as having meaning to ourselves and in the context of society, right? And what we're asking white people to do is to not advocate for Black people. We're asking white people to look within themselves and understand their own race and how that matters to them and to society. So once you sort of understand that about yourself, you're able to be an effective ally.
Agreed.
Understand how you fit into the world, right?
And so what have you been doing on like a personal level in the last 2 years? Because I think this is so helpful to understand. You know, I myself, I'm growing every day as an activist. You know, for years throughout my 20s thought, like, because I knew the basics of everything, I considered myself like evolved and, you know, and someone who was fairly informed. And also a mistake I made, which I think probably a lot of other people can identify with, is that because I'm a woman, I experience oppression regularly. And then because I am a South Asian woman, I experience oppression not only from white people, but also from men within my own culture.
Yep.
And I grew up as a sick child, so I experienced problems because of that and oppression because of that. And so because of that, I was so caught up in my own oppression that I failed to learn about the oppression of others. And I thought, and by the way, this is recent for me, I came here just 5 years ago thinking, oh no, like I understand the plight of Black women in America because I too am a woman of color. So we've experienced the same, we're in this together, and we're in the same fight. And so whenever I would be tone deaf or accidental or by mistake tone police someone or whatever who happened to be a Black woman, and she would come back with me saying that I was racist or anti-Black or any of those things, I would just think, well, how could I be? Because I am a woman of color too. But I realized that I was being ignorant and I was tone policing, and I didn't even know what tone policing was. And I was more privileged than them. I may not be the most privileged person in the world, but I have privilege that they didn't have. And this runs throughout all of us. You know, you can even be a Black person who is able-bodied, therefore you have more privilege than a Black person who is a disability, or a like a person of color who is cis has more privilege than a person who is trans or non-binary. So it like there are all these different spectrums of privilege, and it takes nothing away from us to acknowledge that and do our best to destabilize it.
But people hold on to it so tightly because they don't understand that once they release it and once they understand their place in society with the privilege they have, that it's actually freeing, that it actually makes you feel like you're part of the whole. And that's the best way I can explain it. And I think that so I personally have committed myself. So we basically focus on anti-Black racism because that's our origin story. That's where we come from. So and we picked a very specific lane for our work. And we're digging into that work. And that is basically getting all of America to understand anti-Black racism and where that comes from, because that is America. That's how the founding of America. America was built on enslaved people, and understand how all of our systems flowed out of that, and how people are suffering from it in lots of different ways, and not just, well, we're going to talk really, I want to make sure we get to the Ahmaud Arbery thing at some point.
Yes, no, that's true. Don't worry,
that's on the list.
Agenda.
Okay. Yes. So I've committed myself to constantly learning, to just learning everything I can about how America was built, all the way through, from enslavement to Jim Crow, Reconstruction, all the way through to today, mass incarceration, et cetera, to understanding all the different ways that racism is embedded in our systems. I read, I watch, I am doing all the work so that I can then pass on through P2P, from Privilege to Progress, the resources that that I'm, that are really speaking to me, that I give different ones that are easy. Watch this movie, listen to this podcast. I give ones that are harder, higher level, once you're down the path. But that's what I'm constantly unlearning, the racism that we've all learned, that all Americans learn from lack of education in a traditional school, lies in the way that our history is communicated in or was and continues to be in schools, media representation.
They also, by the way, just don't
in
decide,
Hollywood.
they omit the truth. That's something I've learned about America.
Yes.
That they omit the truth. It
Oh,
was really interesting.
absolutely.
We learned about the slave trade in America in England, and yet people who are the same age as me, who are from America, didn't learn about it in school. And I find that mind-blowing.
Yes. Yeah, it's like I could tell some crazy stories about the things we did not learn. That would embarrass a lot of people. That I mean, we didn't know. We didn't know. I mean, I think the first.
Tell us some of the things, because I think that it's important to
Okay,
understand
I'm going to tell a story, and I'm
pain
not
and
going
the rage
to
comes from.
name the person,
Okay.
although I think they could be watching. Is that one of my friends?
Yeah.
I went to Catholic high school, an all girls Catholic high school. They don't teach history at all, and it was until this friend was in their 30s. They didn't realize there was a slave trade. They thought Africans were already here, and then they were captured and enslaved.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. I mean, for me, the first thing that that really, I remember I'm older than you are, that I saw Roots when I was a young child. I think it was in the 70s that it came on. That was the first thing that I was like, holy crap, what? And then, like, as you said, up until Starbucks was 2 years ago, there's so much I didn't know. There's just so much, and there's so much to learn. And the thing about it is that there's a field of study basically called, racial identity development, and you can learn about it, and people learn about it in their master's degree programs and things like that. But we all go through a process of racial identity development, and it's just like grief is a process. That is an actual psychological process, and it has stages, and you go in and out of stages. So you find, like, I'm sure it sounds like you went through those things, your racial identity development. I can hear where you are, and you're like, that's amazing, like, because you've done the work. But it takes, and I don't want to say work, it takes curiosity,
Care.
and care for other human beings, and a desire to be fully human. That's what it takes.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it is funny when people, call it work, because work is a funny thing.
Well, work makes it sound arduous, and it makes it sound forced somehow. It makes it feel like you're employed to do it. Whereas I think the most important thing is you are employing yourself to do the work. And I have learned so much in the last couple of years in a way that has only made me a better and hopefully slightly smarter person. It is so worth it and important to work. And
will you tell me?
No,
tell me what what you got on how you got on the path?
How I got on the path of what though? I'm on 17 paths.
I guess understanding your responsibility to speak up against different kinds of marginalization of people. Like, what was there a moment?
I guess I was 19 when I first started toying with like learning how to have a voice. So I was very quiet until then. And so I think I was about 19 years old when I started realizing I'd gone through a lot. Like, I'd been a very anorexic teenager, and then I was hit by a car and hurt my back so badly that I was in bed for over a year and a half, and I gained like 75 pounds, which for an anorexic is very traumatic. That's 5.5 stone. And I, at the time, had been this sort of young model in training. I was like a teen model in training. I wasn't actually getting any work yet because I was super young, but I was starving myself in this industry. And I was like, that almost killed me. And now that I've developed like this new relationship with my body and this newfound respect for my body and my limbs, I realized I didn't want to hurt it anymore. I wanted to attack the infrastructure that had made me think that it was a good idea to starve my 5'10" frame until my period stopped, until I had bed sores because my bones were digging into my mattress. And so I started an activism. I started writing letters and trying to like organize other teenagers to help me harass the British Fashion Council into acknowledging that there was a big problem. And so I was one of the people who helped kick off the size zero debate. I don't know if you remember this. 15 years ago.
Yeah. Oh my
But
God.
I was part of that movement because of letters that I wrote to the Evening Standard, which is a big newspaper in England. So I was 19 when I started, but I didn't really, unfortunately, and this is the fucking problem, right? Is that I was engaging in activism for 7 or 8 years before anyone actually heard me. It wasn't until I became a famous TV host and until I was accepted by society because of my privilege that people listened to me about the same things I was saying when I was underprivileged.
Yeah.
And so it's been a kind of 14-year journey of realizing that the only way to be heard most of the time is with privilege or with the privileged help of others. And it makes me sick. And it's why it ends up that people feel like I'm trying to center myself in so many conversations or in conversations of communities that I don't belong in. And it's more that I'm not, I'm just trying to make sure that I use my moment to say the important thing, because I know from experience, from not having been listened to when I was marginalized and now being listened to when I'm no longer marginalized, that unfortunately we are still in a fucking system that that victim blames those who are being oppressed and listens to the people who are kind of benefiting from the system of oppression.
Yeah.
And then that comes with its own backlash. But
think about it in that, I mean, first of all, I'm sorry you went through that. That's awful.
No, it's fine.
And think about it in the perspective of that, just even in the Starbucks story, is that if Michelle had shared that video, we wouldn't be here today. No one would have heard about it. It would have gone nowhere.
Yeah.
But because...
Well, let's be honest. Let's be super honest. They would have called her an angry black woman.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But just because I look like this, people listen to me. And I remember afterwards asking a friend of mine, because I said, do you ever see things like that, on social media? And she'll say, oh, every once in a while, but I don't know if I believe them. And I said, well, what made you believe me? Besides the fact that, well, I like you. I can trust you. I can trust your voice. And that is the paradox of the whole thing, is that people listen, sadly, when a white person talks about racism. And so, that gets hairy, because it's like, okay, do you want to censor whiteness? Do you want, really, we should be amplifying the voices of people of color. And that is really what we're doing. So the way I think of myself, I remember when I came home from Starbucks, I don't know, it was like, maybe it was the day afterwards, my 19-year-old, he was 17 at the time. He was like, Mom, why don't you just stop talking? Because I kept going on news shows and stuff like that. And I kept saying, white people need to speak up. And I said, so why don't you just leave it to the activists now? And I was like, because I can't stop, because I can't unsee it. And he said, well, you know what? You're kind of like a double agent. So yeah, I guess that makes sense. So that's why I think of myself as like a conduit, right? As that, and a white person in this movement is to undo the racism inside of you, work on undoing the racism inside of you. And then when you're in a white space and when you're with your white family, you then speak up and interrupt it. And when you're in another space where there's people of color, amplify their voice.
Yeah. And also, I think it's important to say, and I keep trying to remind my following of this, is that you don't have to be someone like me. Yes, I am more likely to be heard at first.
Yes.
But you don't have to come out screaming on Twitter the way that I have been known to do. You don't have to, even perhaps you have a social anxiety or a fear of crowds or a disability that means that you can't go out with a placard. Those are not the only two forms of activism. Yeah. I believe the strongest power is that of brick by brick activism. And as I was saying before, I'm the loud voice that starts the brick by brick activism. But I'm nothing without all the people who then sign the petitions, who educate each other, who do the learning. And I think that it's so important to empower everyone to know that you don't have to be famous. You don't have to have all the information. You don't have to be educated. You just have to show up. Even in your own circle, you can make a difference.
Hashtag show up. Good job.
Exactly. Hashtag
Yeah.
show up. That is your message for Privilege to Progress. Even if you are just educating your parents, that might change the way that they vote.
Yes.
If you educate your aunts and your uncles or your
Yes.
friends, then they might go on to educate someone else, or you might stop them from causing harm to someone
Yes.
else. This is how change spreads, is via us
Yes.
just disinfecting the
Yes.
fucking swamp. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. It's cleansing your lens, because our lenses are very clouded. And it's, you know, we always say this when we used to do our speeches in person, which we will do again soon someday, is that the way you get at this is with the individual. And if each individual unlearns this biased thinking that they've learned, right? Undoes that thing inside of themselves, then spreads that word within their networks, then that's how it changes. So we say, like, I'm not asking everyone to be an activist. I'm asking everyone to look at themselves, work on themselves, to use that word work, be curious about yourself, right? And then let other people know that you're on that path too, by just share it. You know, click something today. I put something the other day, just said, share this on your story to show that you're on the path.
Mm-hmm.
And to
but
ask
don't you stop there.
to be on the path.
That's a great place to start. But as
Yes.
Obama says, that a like and retweet doesn't constitute like the best.
Absolutely.
So you're right.
Absolutely.
To start by amplifying other voices. And the thing that I learned is that, you know, I fucked up a lot publicly in the last couple of years, because I've been doorstepped with a question about a community that I don't know the full history of. And because I've been afraid that it'll seem like I don't care if I don't answer the question, I answer the question and I'm not ready to answer it. I fuck it up, or I try and say it in 280 characters, which is insane, because that's
horrible.
Nuanced subjects. And then I get rightfully called out, and I realized that I was like, well, you know what? Why did I think that I should say something? What I should have done is get a fucking expert who knows how to talk about that experience better than me, and put them on my social media, which is what I've now been doing over the last year and a half probably. It's just finding other people. For example, my timeline now just looks like a basic retweet of like Privilege to Progress. It's like you say things, or you find other people who say things in ways that I will never be eloquent enough to say them, and there's no shame in that. This is not supposed to be something we do for the allyship Olympics. We're not looking for no one should be looking for a medal. You shouldn't be looking for a pat on the back. You should just be looking for a world that is safe. For all of us. You don't know what world your children are you don't know what your children are gonna look like if you have children, or you have nieces or nephews or whatever. You don't know if they might grow up mixed race. You don't know if they might grow up gay. You don't know if they might be trans. You don't know if they might have a disability. You don't know which margin they might exist within. So you are fighting for a better world, not just for people that you don't know, but for someone who might be related to you. It benefits all of us to protect everyone. I really believe that. And when it comes to privilege, what I want everyone to realize is that, you know, I think the big argument that we keep seeing again and again and again is that as soon as you talk about racial privilege, because right now we're talking about about white privilege, you know, especially when they're marginalizing Black people. As soon as you talk about privilege, often the argument that gets brought back from white people is, well, what about poor white people?
Yeah.
And they turn it into a class and economic debate, whereas actually sometimes privilege can be as simple, and I'm not telling you this, obviously you know this, your entire infrastructure work, but what I want my followers to understand is that sometimes privilege can be as simple as just the absence of being discriminated against over the way that you. Sometimes it's just knowing that you're going to get in your car and drive to work, and you are almost definitely not going to be harassed or murdered by a police officer for just driving a car. Just knowing you're safe everywhere you walk. People aren't going to cross the road when they see you. They aren't going to hold on to their handbag when you walk past them. Just these small things. They're not going to report you or blame you for a crime you didn't commit. That in itself is such immense privilege that we take so for granted. I still take it for granted every day because I can't even fathom the experience.
Exactly. You can't. I mean, and if you just like, privilege, it's such a triggering word, right?
Yeah.
But really, it just means that that particular thing doesn't affect you negatively. So skin privilege, it just means that the color of your skin is not a barrier for you or a threat for you, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that, you know, you have everything, because certainly you can have like a lot of other hardships, right?
Yeah. I'm listening. I'm just plugging in my phone. I'm not showing you.
Oh yeah, I plugged mine in just in case, right? Because this will drain, lives drain all of it.
I completely agree, and I really appreciate that. And I also just love the fact that you've put the word privilege as the first word of your organization, just to immediately get that word out there, destigmatize it, take away the shame from it, and make it look as a privilege is power, and it's power that you're supposed to use for good. And something else before we talk about Ahmaud Arbery, which is one of the most astonishing cases, and yet not an anomaly in the system, not a new thing to happen in America. Just because we're seeing the video and these things are finally getting traction doesn't mean that this is the worst thing that's happened this year or in the history of experience from African Americans. But I've been learning about Ibram Kendi. And
he's amazing.
I've just recently interviewed him on my podcast, which will come out soon. He talks about, and I think this might be the most important message for everyone everywhere, that there's no such thing as just not being racist.
Exactly.
If you are either racist or you are anti-racist. If you are not actively trying to destabilize racism, then you are on the side of racism. If you are not doing what you can to be anti-racist, to fight for equality and equity of Black people or whoever is, you know, being subjected to discrimination over their race, then you are on the side of the oppressor. There's no mutual ground. You can't be neutral here. And that's something that I didn't know for a really long time. And nor did all of the smart, liberal people I know. Just thought, as long as I'm not actively engaging in oppressing someone who is marginalized, then I'm a good person.
Yep. And I will say that is
wake up call.
I will say, I would venture to say that most people, and if we're talking about anti-Black racism and we're talking about white America, just specifically, I will say most people, liberal, progressive people who consider themselves not racist, they don't know that. And it is really a crucial fact. I mean, Martin Luther King said it, you know, back in the 60s, as silence is complicity, right? I mean, if you're not taking action, if you're not doing anything against it, you're allowing it to happen, and allowing it to get worse. Truthfully, it continues to get worse. And when you even think of like COVID and
how, you benefit from it.
Exactly. So you have it exactly right, and it really is a very simple, logical concept that and the thing about it is that what we learned in the whole Starbucks situation, what we learned is that there is huge amounts, like you said, like your liberal progressive friends, right, who just have no awareness of this. Because if you think of it this way, that if you're white, your network is 91% white, only 8% of the time you're seeing posts about race, like you just don't have access to that information unless you're seeking it out, which is why Michelle and I appreciate you, because we know you have a lot of people in your network there who are now probably going to hear some of this for the first time from you and from me, right? And so now they can get on the path. Now they can start.
And it's never too late. It's never too late. We are in a society currently, especially on social media, where there's a lot of like bragging of like mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the wokest of them all. And I think that it is so important to value being someone who is educated about social justice, but also making people feel like they have to arrive with all of the answers isn't realistic. It's idealistic. I understand the wish for it, but it's idealistic. And so what I've created I weigh to be for, and what I believe privileged
Yeah.
progress is that we are saying that wherever you're starting from, whatever age,
Yep.
when I started our path of being truly aware late.
I was 50.
And it's never
50.
too late. Yeah, well, I was almost 30. Like, it's never too late to start. And you're never going to have all of the answers. Even the people who think have all of the answers, even they have got some spot of ignorance somewhere. Because nobody can know everything until they've done their due diligence to learn. And there's a lot to learn. So we'll be learning
forever. So you know what we say at Privilege and Progress? This is our thing. We don't use the word woke. We don't use the word ally. We don't use, what we say is you show up. And the reason we say that is because showing up is action. It's movement. It's something that never, it's not a destination. You're never, somebody actually commented on my, which I don't mean that in the nasty way, I appreciate their comment. Someone commented on our post today and said, when will I arrive? And you're never going to arrive. It's like, when will I be the perfect friend? Yeah. When will I be the perfect partner? Never. It's a lifelong process.
Yeah, and it's also like, that's the wrong mindset, that if you're doing this for an award or for popularity, then you're in the wrong game. Because once you do show up, it's hard work, and people start to develop expectations of you. I get held to higher standards than my peers who don't try at all.
Absolutely.
And so you can't do this expecting that everyone's going to approve of every single thing you do.
And you're not going to do everything right.
No, you have to do this from a place of your end goal is always shifting. And it is always to help as many people as you can. And once you've helped a certain amount of people, you're like, great, now who else can help? And this isn't me virtue signaling. This is just me realizing that any privilege I have now as a woman who's allowed to tweet, as a woman who has a job, who's allowed to drive if I want to, who has equal parity with like the men that I work with, that's because someone who looked like me or looked like you relentlessly showed up until I got this freedom. Because there are women who look like me around the world who don't have this freedom. There are some women who don't have any freedom over their bodies or their minds still in 2020 in this world. And so it's made me realize that I don't do this because I'm proud to. It's because I have to pay it forward.
You have to. And you know, it's beautiful. We so appreciate you. It's that you, the way that I feel about it is I can't stop. I have to. Yeah. There's not a choice for me. I wake up in the morning and I think like, oh, I have to see what's happening. I have to understand. I have to do something. I have to say something. And that happens once you start to, like I said, cleanse that lens. Once you start to make yourself aware of things. Once you start to learn. Once you start to desegregate your life in all different ways. And then it's no problem. Then you have to do it.
Totally. Well, I found you under devastating circumstances. I came across your work because of the death of Ahmaud Arbery, who is a young black man who was killed in February by white supremacists.
Yes. The other guy just got arrested.
Yeah. Whoever dealt the lethal blow was not the only murderer.
That's right.
All three of them were very much so complicit, including the man that filmed the tape that many of us saw, that very, very traumatic video, circulated on the internet. He was killed by three white supremacists who in a premeditated attack, cornered and lynched him in broad daylight. He was just jogging, minding his own business, had done nothing wrong. Very young man. He was only 25 years old at the time. He would have turned 26 Friday before last. It's only because this video was somehow leaked and then circulated on the internet that 2 months later, these three white supremacists have now been arrested, because the entire world basically had to call for justice.
Yeah.
What planet are we living on? By the way, the police saw that video at the time.
Yes, they did.
The police had all of the facts. They had all of the names. And the DA of Georgia, I believe she was the DA of Georgia, or maybe that particular part of Georgia.
That county, I think, yeah.
The DA who received that video had previously worked with the eldest of those three murderers
Yep.
And so therefore, let them off.
That's right.
And had the world not engaged in calling for this young man's justice, this would be yet another statistic of a murder that we never heard about where justice was never brought. So can you tell me about the work that you've been doing around the devastating loss of Ahmaud?
Yeah, so look, this is happening all the time and we're not hearing about it, just like you said. And the thing about there's very specific things. The third man was arrested today that's happening around it. But the bigger problem is that how do we work to make sure this doesn't happen in the first place? So what's really making me like really fucking angry like every day now is because everyone comes out of the woodwork when someone's murdered and starts to talk about, you know, oh, this is horrible, these white supremacists, racism, but then they disappear and they go back in and they don't say anything again and they don't do the work. And like I said, I'm not asking everyone with a platform or everyone to be an activist, but what I'm asking is you see this happen, you now know that this happens, and the only reason you saw that was from the video. What are you going to do so it doesn't keep happening? Okay? So I get I just like every time our page grew a huge amount after his murder because everybody paid attention, but then they'll get quiet again. So why I appreciate you is because you don't stay quiet, because you say, okay, well, we have to change the conditions that allow that to happen. And understand racism isn't just white supremacists like those 3 murderers. Racism is in every workplace. It's in, you know, every school. It's in every family. It's in every person. And that's what creates the conditions for that to happen. So let's get at the root. Let's, you know, work on that so it doesn't keep happening. So that's where we are. And, you know, one of the things is like, I'm constantly looking, this is how I got in touch with you, is like, I'm constantly looking for people with privilege who can amplify to their network so that we can, you know, keep desegregating this conversation and get at the bottom of the work. But honestly, you know, the amount of influencers and celebrities I saw post about Ahmaud and never say another word really feels performative to me, and really, actually, I mean, I'm glad they're putting it out there, but it doesn't help the problem. It's they go silent and then they're contributing again. So, you know, like, I don't know. I'm thinking of somebody, Taylor Swift, not to call you out, Taylor, I know you're not watching, but like, great, you posted. Now, can you please educate yourself and then speak up in your industry, speak up in your workplace in the music industry and talk about, you know, the discrimination that's happening there. Continue on the path. Don't just go silent.
Same with Justin Timberlake,
yes.
So, like,
I'm making a list.
Numerous people, and these are just the people who even bothered to speak out about it at all. It was deafening, the silence of some. It was particularly for me also, by the way, deafening to see, like, listen, cultural appropriation is a thing, and it's alive and well in America, and there are so many people who profit off Black art that they have appropriated themselves. You have white artists who sing music that is typically from Black culture, they dress like they're from Black culture, they speak like they're from Black culture. Zip. Black people get murdered, zip. Nothing. So it's like you're happy to take, but you are not willing to do anything to preserve this culture that without them you wouldn't exist. How can you not want to? Well, I don't understand how everyone in particular, the ones who, like, you know, Justin Timberlake. Come on now. Like, exactly.
At least Eminem
protect the people who make the art that you have benefited off so much. Not to just call him out to societal issues, but I don't. What I don't want to see is people post just for the sake, just so that they don't get called out for not participating. Like, we all have to talk about this shit constantly. And
Yes.
and this refers to every different type of marginalization.
Yes.
Right now, you and I are talking
Yes.
about what your organization does, but this also
Yes.
shows up for
Yes.
actors talking about disability, people
Yes.
talking about disability, people talking about trans rights.
Yes.
If we can't, like, I get told off all the time by like podcasters and bloggers who are like, I wish you'd just stay in her lane and just shut the fuck up and be a pretty actress. People tell me all the time, I think it was maybe like the Keep It podcast, who just said, she's so annoying, does she ever take a day off? And it's like, how can we take a day off?
Yeah.
If this
Yep.
bullshit won't, like, when this bullshit stops, I'll shut up. None of us enjoy doing this. It is very traumatizing to consistently talk about. Can you imagine what it's like
Yep.
for Black people?
Yeah.
Or disabled people or marginalized people in general to have to, I as a woman am exhausted from talking about feminism. I cannot imagine what it's like to talk about feminism and being Black and
Yeah.
being trans.
Yeah. Yeah. I get distracted by the comments, and I just saw one go by that I want to address. And
sure.
somebody said, where is the Black person in this conversation between you and me?
Yes.
And that's an excellent question, and thank you for bringing it up. And well, first of all, like, absolutely, Michelle, who's my partner at P2P and who's Black, would be here, except for you can only do 2 people on Instagram Live. So we would have done it together, but
you're social distancing, which is why you're not both here now.
Yes, and she and I split these up. So she does some and I do some, and we keep the conversation going that way. But the whole base of our conversation, the whole base of P2P, is that it's Michelle and me together, working together, modeling the conversation. So
it's also important to acknowledge that the Black woman in this duo shouldn't have to do all of the labor, shouldn't have to show up to re-traumatize herself talking about Ahmaud, and she does it, by the way, plenty. But also, this is also the point of allyship, is sometimes showing up so that your marginalized friends can have a fucking day off or an hour off from talking about
exactly. And then I also could say, I don't know the makeup of this space, but if this is a primarily white space, I don't know if it is, then I mean, this is where I'm amplifying the conversation, and that we're talking about how we work inside of ourselves to dismantle this so that we can take this action in our everyday lives. And what you're doing at iWay and in your personal life, I mean, like, it's so important, and it's really, really, really having an effect to amplify the voices of people who need to be heard. Because every time you share something that we have there, you're amplifying that so that people can then join in and start learning.
So all of my followers, I would love for you to follow @Priv2Prog, that's Privilege to Progress. I will, it's on the original banner that you would have seen that you joined this from, but I will post it again after this conversation. Join them, amplify the people that they are amplifying, and join this chain of command where together we are starting to shift our own narratives and the narratives of the world in which we're living. It's so important. And may we get to a point where A, these conversations don't need to happen anymore, but B, we should be at a place by now where marginalized people aren't having to speak up all the time about their own marginalization.
Exactly.
May these conversations consistently be having, being had by people with privilege with each other, because that's the exact thing that we're both standing for, is that these are the conversations that people with privilege are supposed to be having with each other. Because
where are the men talking to other men? I mean, I want the men talking to other men about feminism.
Exactly.
That's what I want, because that's where the power is.
Exactly. It's exactly that this conversation right here should be happening, so that we don't consistently expect the people who are already just surviving on a day-to-day basis to do the additional labor of unraveling these difficult conversations. Thank you for the work that you're doing.
We are so happy to be working with you at iWay and you personally, and hopefully we can do more things together.
Oh, for sure.
Conversation going. Michelle and I refuse to let this conversation die, because we just see these things happening. Like I said, Ahmaud Arbery, like, the conversation came up again today because of that arrest, but that conversation's going to die again. I mean, horribly.
So, like, look at how much more press that story got than Brianna.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like, Brianna happened, like, what, 5 days later? After that, it was within 5 days, I think, of the Ahmaud Arbery case, like, really surfacing. No one spoke about it. And then there was a Black trans woman who was murdered.
Yes.
Within that same week, no one said shit.
No one said shit. So the thing is, if you say, so what we want everybody to do is work on changing yourself so we can change the environment that allows those things to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do it after the fact. Let's get on that path to anti-racism now so that we can prevent these things in the future.
Agreed.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, privilege to progress. I start working with them. We're definitely, this is just the beginning. I hate the circumstances under which we met. They are so devastating. Yeah. But may we work together to avoid that being how people meet in the future. And I really appreciate having found your account. It's been really eye-opening, and I appreciate the kind of work you do, and I urge all of my followers to follow you, and I will continue to signal boost you on my own platform and on my way.
Thank you. We appreciate you.
Thanks for giving me time. Thank you, and Michelle, for the work that you guys do. It's so important, and I know it's fucking exhausting.
Yeah, but I can't stop.
No, I know. I know.
I know.
That it's exhausting, and it'll be less exhausting if more people join the fight. So let's
absolutely. And it's certainly less exhausting for me than it is for Michelle because
100%.
I don't experience it.
No, we are spectators. We're spectators, and we are showing up. That's what we're doing.
Yep.
Hashtag show up. That's what
show up.
Do. Thank you for giving me this time. Have a lovely evening, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you. Talk to you soon. Bye. Bye.
Bye, everyone. I'll put this up on the main grid now.